Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. And today we're going to be taking a look at a new line that's going to be hitting shelves fairly soon called Gregarious Grump. Now this line is going to be initially launching with 6 single casks of rum, 5 of which we have here in front of us. And then moving forward, he said that he's going to be bottling spirits aged in wood. So it could be talking agave spirits, scotch, who knows what else. As long as it's aged in wood, he's going to be looking at bottling it as single cask products. As far as distribution, initially these rums are launching in Texas only, but you know, if you're not able to get to Texas and hopefully find one of these, don't worry about it. In the future, he's going to be broadening out, and again, hopefully distribution will be coming to your state fairly soon. Now, as far as the 6 rums that he's launching with and the 5 that we have here in front of us, 3 of these are from Guyana. 16-year-old Guyana rums, all coming from the Diamond Distillery. And of course, the Diamond Distillery is very well known in the rum world for having the heritage stills, which are those old wooden pot stills. They have a coffee still, and of course they have some modern columns. But looking at the ABVs here, I believe these 3 are coming from those wooden pot stills because they're lower ABV and they're really very aromatic and very full rums. Now, the Barbados rums, I have one of the 2, but I did get to taste the other one. So if you like the notes on this one, you're probably going to like the other one because they're pretty similar. But they're coming from the Foursquare Distillery, 12 years of age maturation. And of course, Foursquare uses a combination of pot and column distillates in their blends. And so this could be a combination, which I believe it is at 126.4 proof. And finally, the Belize rum. This one is 14 years old, coming from the Travelers Distillery. And the Belize rum is a column distillate. That's what they use there. And that is bottled at 130.2 proof. That is a beast of a rum. Now, as far as it being uncut, unfiltered, because that's one of the kind of like the mission statement behind this whole line, is that he's not going to be introducing any kind of coloring or any sweeteners, anything like that to the product. As it comes out of the wood, that's what you're going to get. But another consequence of that, because it's unfiltered, is you will see a little bit of char in the bottom of some of these bottles. You're probably going to at least see a little dusting. I think the lightest one for me right now is this, probably the Foursquare. But again, that's all going to vary. So, but don't be worried about it. You know, it's not going to harm you. Matter of fact, a lot of people think it's actually good for you. So if you want some of that char in there, give it a swirl before pouring it. If not, just it's already settled, so just lightly pour it. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to the nosing and tasting, starting with the Guyana rums. Again, 16 years old. We have one at 97.6 proof, 104.2 proof, and 109 proof. And then we're going to jump up to that Barbados rum at 126.4, and then we're going to finish up on that Belize at 130.2. As far as how many bottles were in each cask, they were roughly around this, somewhere between 180 and 250. The Guyana's 180, 205 bottles for the 104.2, 222 for the 109. This Barbados had 222, and the Belize had around 250. Okay? All right. On to the nose. Guyana 16, 97.6 proof. Oh yeah, definitely that pot distillate. It's dense, it's heavy rum. It has a lot of brown sugar and almost caramel together, like a 50-50%. So there's some depth and there's some sweetness. As a matter of fact, there's some kind of like that old blackstrap molasses going on, adding even further to the depth of this one. Aromatically, it's very, very unique. It's almost a little buttery. There's celery seed, cardamom in here. Some red fruits, but they're cooked down with those brown sugars. Maybe a little cherry, a little raspberry. Plums, figs, little date characteristic. Cinnamon, clove. A little wisp of anise or anise in here. It's pretty leathery. And a good amount of oak, but it's really nice. All those characteristics are really balanced, adding to some A really complex rum. All right, let's go ahead and give it a taste, because we're going to go ahead and nose them and taste them one at a time. .97.6 proof, good medium, above medium viscosity. Wow, and it really takes a dive. As it enters, it kind of felt very creamy, soft. It kind of gave you that little bit of that molasses brown sugar. I started picking up some of those celery seed notes, and all of a sudden it took a really big depth, dive into the depths, so let's say it like that. But yeah, initially that caramel brown sugar, that molasses comes in, rushes in, the celery seed. Ooh, there's a little bit of an orange oil in there. Cardamom definitely is a big factor here. Kind of has an earthy, herbal tone or base to it. And then as it starts dropping down, you start picking up some of the sweetness of the vanilla, clove, light, I would say moderate cinnamon, a little hint of that licorice, anise or anise. Those orange oils really carrying it down. You start picking up that blackstrap molasses, old leather, and really nice rich oak, but it's very, very clean. It's not tannic. It's not really drying things out too much. Very, very solid effort right there with that cask selection. 97.6. That real herbal tone. Really love that about it. Celery, cardamom, those two spices are very unique, but they really work in there. Kind of reminds me of old rums, kind of like the old Mount Gay Tricentennial. That's a legendary rum, but or the old Pirate cask. I think it's the 23, the old one, not the one that's on shelves now. The old one that had the lid that actually slid up. Kind of has that vibe with the orange oils. All right, reset that nose. Now we're on to the 104.2 proof. Again, Guyana 16-year-old. Buttery again. Even more butter on this one. But I think I'm picking up less of the celery. Yeah, there's less of that. Still has a lot of brown sugar caramel. Very similar other than the lack of the celery seed in this one. But there's more butter. I like that. Still has all those cooked down berries. Still has the dates. And the figs and the real light. I would almost call this one, yeah, it's a real light, like a golden raisin. Spices seem to be pretty similar as far as the cardamom, the clove is in there, the cinnamon. The leather component is still rolling, and the oak as well. A little bit of dark chocolate hit there as well in the background. All right, let's taste it. Yeah, let me rinse one more time. That first rum finishes rolling. Okay, here we go. Okay, even though I didn't pick up that celery seed note on the nose as much, it's in there. It is a little more muted on that tone, which is fine. Everything else pretty similar to that first 97.6 proof. Ooh. Still medium high viscosity. It's up there. Very oily and rich mouth coating. Again, buttery caramel, brown sugar, blackstrap molasses, a vanilla tone as well. The celery, the cardamom, the clove, the cinnamon. That little hint of that black licorice is in there still. It's just the celery seeds really just backed off a little bit. There is a little more oomph as far as the spice right there because it is bumped up to 104 now. And you do pick up a little bit of the celery seed, but it's actually, again, more muted than the first one, and it actually, to me, it arrives after the mid palate and into the finish. Finish is still leathery, oaky. Still has a little bit of that orange oil, but again, I didn't notice that up front here. Kind of shows up more on the finish. And there's a touch more oak, I would say, in this one. But still delicious, delicious rum. 104.2 proof for that one. All right. Always reset the nose. You can just smell your skin as long as you don't have any cologne, perfume, that type of stuff on. You reset it. Okay, here we go. This is the 109 proof, by the way. Guiana, 16-year-old. Okay. This one, as we're going up in proof, actually think it's tightening up. So aromatically, it's feeling a little more restrained, a little more muted. But I still pick up a lot of buttery caramel, brown sugar, molasses. Red fruits are popping a little more in this one. The clove, the cinnamon. Even less of the celery seed that I was picking up here on the nose is really almost gone in this one at 109 proof. It really is focusing on those cooked down brown sugars with the kind of like a raspberry, cherry, plums, little bit of fig and sweet date. Cinnamon for sure. That's bumped up as the proof has gone up. Cinnamon's popping a little more. Everything else is still kind of in there, but it's again really tight and restrained. Clove, a little bit of that cardamom, leather, oak. All right, let's taste it. Wow. Yeah. Ooh. Again, medium-high viscosity. Ooh, this one has a little bit of a unique little tone there. So what I was noticing when I was oohing about was the butteriness of it, the buttered caramel aspect. Seems to get a little more focus on the buttery caramel as we went up in proof. This one, deep black strap, combination of brown sugar and a little caramel, but it didn't really feel like salted. And then as we're getting up here, we're starting to pick up a little more butter into that caramel or caramel, your choice. But the thing I'm noticing here on the background, on the finish, is I'm picking up on this one, there's a little bit of light peach, a little dried apricot tone in this 109 proof cask. Really, really delicious. It's just focusing a little more on the caramel. Red berry still cooked down. Still has a little bit of that sweet date, a little bit of that fig going on. A hint of that black strap in there. Cardamom is one of the spices that's carrying throughout all these. Cinnamon, clove, all that's still in there. This one's a little more dark chocolate focus on the back end. Once it rolls over that spice tone, starts focusing on the leather, the oak, you start picking up a little more dark chocolate on this one. A little hint of like a nuttiness, a roasted nuttiness to it on the back end. It's just a hint though. It's not big and bold like you'll find in some modern bourbons. Not like that. This is just in the background. Still has that orange oil. So you're carrying that theme throughout every one of those three casks. That still has that celery in there, but it's again a little more restrained. But delicious, delicious nonetheless. I wouldn't be disappointed with any of those. Alright, now we're jumping up from 109 proof, 126.4 for this Barbados 12-year-old. Okay, here we go. 222 bottles of this cask. Ooh-wee. Alright, this one's really, really real caramel forward, buttery again. Really focusing on the caramel sweetness. Little hint of those red berries in here. Again, I feel like they're cooking in that caramel because they're not bright and vibrant fruits. They're softened and they're kind of melded together. Ooh, buttery. Yeah, you can pick that up there. I was searching around that glass and there's certain tones where that butter kind of really jumps out. Almost has a little hint of a funk to it, but I like that. Cinnamon, very well restrained. It's nice and balanced. And a little bit of a earthiness, a little bit of almost like in the brandy world you would call it rancio, a little like earthy, light, very light mushroom. It's crazy that I'm picking that up on the nose, but it is what it is. But overall, I would say, don't let that turn you off. I mean, if that's not a super big note, actually the brightest note here is going to be that big buttery caramel and those red fruits cooked down in it. Cinnamon's balanced. Okay, but let's go ahead and taste it. 126.4. Wow. Salted caramel for days. Ooh-wee. Caramel. Yeah, just a ton of it. Medium high viscosity. It's still really oily. Yeah. Ooh. Big. Yeah. I'm watching it swell. It is really just really salted caramel, buttery caramel forward. Underneath that, because we start riding right up into that cinnamon, but it's so big initially, you don't even notice the cinnamon swelling. It just starts showing up, the big kind of cinnamon, and you're starting to feel like, wow, this has some ABV to it, and it does at 126.4. Vanilla, cinnamon, again, kind of a real light raspberry. I would focus on this one. Raspberry, there's a little cherry in there. Cooked down. But they're just dumped on top with that salted caramel, butter. Lots of butter in that caramel. And then on the back end, because it just kind of introduces, it swells with that spice, those tones. And it starts to taper off. You start picking up a little more vanilla. A little oak underneath that. Leather, but it's not like super old leather. This one's almost feeling kind of like fresh new leather. And there's a little hint of that earthiness, that mushroom that does show up, but that's in the very background in the finish. Very, very enjoyable rum there. 126.4. That's going to call for the double rinse here. So I will say, to me, that one isn't, I'm not going to call it complex by any means, but it is rich and it is buttery, and the finish just kind of rolls. It's doesn't do a lot, but what it does really well. All right, Belize 14-year-old. This is that column distillate from Travelers, 130.2 proof. Oh, wow, again with the big, huge caramel. Not as buttery though. It's so high in ABV. It's again, we're muting characters on the nose. I have to kind of back out of the glass, try to pick. Yeah, but mainly just, again, berries, caramel. The berries are cooked down. Again, we start to see this melding of fruits. There's a little bit of plum skins in there. A little bit of a anise anise, that licorice tone is in here. Clove and cinnamon. They actually feel really nice and round. There's not too much cinnamon, not too much clove, or not too much of the other, the anise anise. Some leather as well. And you almost pick up a little wisp of smoke, a little wisp of that barrel char in there. Let's taste it. "14-year-old Belize, 130.2 proof. Medium-high viscosity, really super oily. To be honest with you, when I taste this, if I was tasting this blind, I might almost call this a, well, not except for the finish. The finish starts getting pretty rummy. But up front, with that amount of caramel and that big swell of nice baking cinnamon, it feels very like a Canadian whiskey to me. Like a big cast-strength Canadian with some good maturation on it. Kind of like that old St. Nick did that 15-year-old last year. That was well over 100 proof. Kind of has that, it reminds me of that a little bit. All right, but let's try to pick the notes here. Buttery caramel, not salted. Just a lot of butter, lots of rich caramel. Brown sugar as well, adding some depth to that. Molasses, a little molasses in there. Red fruits, berries. Cinnamon, again, baking cinnamon, baking spices. A little hint of clove, a little touch of nutmeg, like a little pinch of nutmeg, just a touch. Leather, cocoa powder, vanilla and oak. Yeah, that's, again, these two to me aren't super complex, but man, are they flavorful and big rums. Now, if you're looking for that old style big black strap molasses, then definitely try to look for the Guianas. But if you like that a little more caramel forward and more powerful rums, and the Barbados 12 or the Belize 14 is probably going to be the way to go. Again, initial launch is going to be Texas only, unfortunately. But Kris Hart, the man behind this, who I spoke with, if you're in Texas, you're familiar with that name. Outside of Texas, who knows? But Kristopher Hart, I mean, he's pretty big in the Houston bourbon scene. He's part of the, I think, one of the heads of the Houston Bourbon Society, and then he also heads up the Houston Bourbon Social each and every year, which was Texas's probably best whiskey show that we have. But he's doing fantastic picks, especially with this initial 5 or 6. I have tasted the other Barbados. He did a great job with those selections. So hopefully what he's doing moving forward will continue to expand out, and hopefully everyone will get a chance to be able to find these. Anyway, thank y'all all for watching this video. Greatly appreciate you here on YouTube. Of course, if you like content like this, feel free to join me over at my Patreon channel, patreon.com/LiquorHound, where I'm doing a video review every week. Everyone have a great day, and cheers.